Stop. Don't drink that. It's been poisoned. The voice cut through the glittering silence like a blade. The music stopped. Laughter froze. All eyes turned toward the girl standing at the edge of the grand hall. She looked out of place. Barefoot, clothes worn, one trembling hand pressed against her swollen belly. A poor, homeless pregnant woman in the middle of a mansion filled with silk gowns and tailored suits. Yet in that moment, every gaze belonged to her. Adrian Kane, the young billionaire, held a glass of wine halfway to his lips. His sharp eyes narrowed at the girl, then flicked to his best friend beside him. The tension was sudden, heavy, electric. Amara's voice broke again, soft but fierce. Please, I saw it. Don't drink. And just like that, the night that was meant to celebrate power and wealth turned into the beginning of a storm no one could escape. Amara Cole was the kind of girl who caught people's attention without even trying. At Cole Academy, her presence alone could turn heads. She had long, dark hair that flowed like silk whenever the wind brushed against it, skin that glowed like bronze kissed by the sun, and eyes that held a softness that made you want to trust her instantly. Her smile was her crown. It wasn't just pretty, it was warm, like sunshine breaking through a cloudy day. But what truly made Amara stand out was not her beauty. It was her heart. She was the daughter of Chief Cole, one of the richest men in the city, a billionaire who owned businesses that touched almost every corner of the country. Everyone knew her last name, carried weight, respect, and envy all at once. People expected her to be arrogant, spoiled, or untouchable. But Amara was none of those things. She never acted like her father's money made her better than anyone else. In fact, she went out of her way to make sure it didn't. When a classmate forgot their lunch, Amara would slide half of hers across the table with a soft smile, not caring if her own plate went half empty. When she noticed the quiet ones, the ones who sat at the edge of the cafeteria, shrinking away from the noisy chatter, she would join them, asking simple questions that made them feel seen. What book are you reading? Or do you like drawing? Her kindness wasn't loud, but it was consistent. Her classmates adored her for that. Some whispered behind her back, not out of malice, but out of admiration. She's so humble, one girl told her friend as Amara helped pick up books that had fallen from another student's hands. She could be bragging about designer clothes or expensive trips, but she never does. Amara's wardrobe was full of luxury. Shoes that cost more than a teacher's monthly salary, dresses custom-made by designers, but she never made anyone feel small for not having the same. To her, they were just clothes, just fabric. She wore them with grace, but never with pride that pressed down on others. Teachers loved her too, not just because she was smart, though she was, but because she respected everyone. She said good morning to the janitors, thanked the cafeteria staff, and greeted the security guards at the gate. She moved through life with an ease that made people believe kindness was her true inheritance, not money. Still, being the daughter of Chief Cole wasn't always easy. There were expectations that followed her like shadows. Expectations to be perfect, to always smile, to never falter. Sometimes, when she was alone in her room at night, Amara wondered if anyone truly saw her beyond her last name. Did people love her, or did they love the idea of her? But she pushed those thoughts aside. As long as she could make someone's day brighter, that was enough for her. At school, Amara's laughter often rang through the halls. She wasn't just admired, she was loved. Her presence was like a gentle breeze on a hot day, refreshing and welcome. No matter who you were, whether you came from wealth or struggled to pay fees, Amara treated you as if you mattered, because to her everyone did. And so she became known as the Golden Daughter of Cole Academy, not just because of the riches she was born into, but because of the light she carried inside her. The afternoon sun was still bright when Amara's school driver pulled into the wide gates of the Cole mansion. She leaned against the car window, humming softly to herself, thinking of how she would tell her mother about the math quiz she had aced earlier that day. Normally, the house stood like a proud castle, peaceful and quiet, but today it looked different. Cars crowded the driveway. Strange voices floated out from the open front doors. Amara's smile faded. Her stomach tightened as she stepped out of the car. She hurried inside, clutching her school bag. The air was heavy. Everywhere she looked, she saw her relatives. Her father's brothers, cousins, and even distant family members she barely knew. Some sat with their heads bowed, faces wet with tears. Others stood in corners, whispering with grim expressions. "Uncle? Auntie? What's going on?" Amara asked, her voice shaky. No one answered her directly. Some looked away. Some began to sob even louder. The sound of her aunt's wailing echoed through the mansion, making the walls feel as though they were closing in. Fear shot through Amara's chest. Then her uncle, Mr. Raymond, appeared. His eyes were red, his lips trembling. He put a hand on her shoulder, guiding her away from the others. They stopped in the hallway, where it was quieter, but the silence felt even heavier. "Uncle, what happened?" Amara whispered. Mr. Raymond swallowed hard, as though the words themselves cut his throat. Finally, he said, voice low and broken, "Amara, both of your parents, they didn't survive the plane crash." The world around her seemed to tilt. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her knees buckled beneath her, and she grabbed at her uncle's arm to keep from collapsing. "No, no, no!" she screamed, shaking her head violently. Her school bag slipped from her hands, books spilling across the polished floor. The sound of her cry carried through the mansion, making those in the living room fall silent. Amara's body shook as sobs tore out of her chest. She ran into the living room, desperate, her voice breaking. "Someone tell me it's not true. Please, tell me they're alive." But no one did. Some averted their eyes, others reached out to touch her shoulder gently, their faces soaked with pity. Her parents, her laughter-filled mother who kissed her forehead every night, her strong father whose voice was her anchor, were gone. Just like that, the days that followed were a blur. At the burial, the air smelled of earth and rain. Amara wore black, her small hands clutching the white roses she had been given to place on the caskets. The priest's words floated past her ears, muffled, as if she were underwater. She stared at the two coffins side by side, her chest hollow. When it was time to say goodbye, she broke down completely. She clung to the caskets, screaming until her voice grew hoarse. Her relatives had to pull her away gently, but her cries didn't stop. She sobbed until she couldn't breathe, until her throat burned, until exhaustion silenced her. That night, when everyone else was gone, Amara sat in her empty room, hugging her pillow. The walls seemed to whisper with memories. Her mother's laughter, her father's firm footsteps, the warmth of their love. But the house felt different now, darker, colder. She had no way of knowing then that losing her parents was only the beginning. The true storm of her life was yet to come. The mansion felt like a different world after the burial. Where once there had been warmth, laughter, and the sweet smell of her mother's favorite candles, now there was silence, broken only by the cold echo of footsteps. Amara had expected her relatives to stay for a while to comfort her, but instead, they stayed permanently. Within weeks, her Uncle Raymond and his wife, Aunt Lydia, moved into the Cole mansion as though it belonged to them. At first, Amara didn't understand. She thought they were simply trying to help her adjust to life without her parents. But soon, the truth revealed itself in cruel, deliberate ways. One morning, she returned to her room to find her wardrobe almost empty. The designer dresses her mother had bought her from Paris, the expensive shoes her father had surprised her with on her last birthday, the jewelry she had kept in little velvet boxes, all gone. In their place were two plain dresses, both a size too big, hanging limply on wooden hangers. When she rushed downstairs to ask where her belongings were, Aunt Lydia sneered, arms crossed. "Those things are too expensive for a girl who no longer has parents to spoil her. You should learn to live like ordinary people." Amara's chest tightened. "But they were gifts from my parents." Aunt Lydia's eyes narrowed. "Your parents are dead. Those things are mine now. Be grateful I even left you something to wear." From that day forward, Amara's life began to crumble piece by piece. She was no longer the heiress of the Cole mansion. She was treated like a maid. Every morning, before the sun rose, She was forced to wake up and scrub the marble floors until her hands stung. She washed mountains of clothes, bent over buckets until her back ached. At mealtimes, she served her uncle and his family, standing behind their chairs like a servant. Only after they were done eating was she allowed to touch what little was left. Sometimes a few crumbs, sometimes nothing at all. Her uncle, once a man who used to smile kindly at her during family gatherings, now treated her like she was invisible. He rarely spoke, and when he did, it was only to give her another chore. Aunt Lydia, however, seemed to take pleasure in her suffering. "You think you're special because you are rich?" Aunt Lydia said one afternoon as Amara scrubbed the kitchen floor. Her voice dripped with venom. "You're nothing without your parents. Nothing." Amara bit her lip to hold back tears. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but she had no one to defend her. So she lowered her head and kept scrubbing. Her suffering only grew worse. She was stopped from going to school. When she asked timidly if she could continue her studies, her uncle's answer was sharp. "There's no need for that. You have work to do here." The days blurred into one another. Long hours of labor, cold nights in a room stripped bare of comfort. She slept on a thin mattress, hugging herself for warmth. Some nights, she cried silently into her pillow, her tears soaking the fabric. Other nights, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering why fate had been so cruel to her. Hunger gnawed at her often. There were days when no food was left after the family had eaten. Her stomach growled, but she said nothing. She had learned quickly that begging for food only brought her aunt's mocking laughter. The mansion that had once been her home now felt like a prison. The walls seemed to watch her, reminding her of all she had lost. Her parents were gone, her inheritance stolen, her dignity stripped away. Amara Cole, once the golden daughter of Cole Academy, was now a servant in her own father's house. And yet, deep in her heart, a small flame still burned, a quiet hope that one day she would escape this nightmare. But for now she endured because she had no choice. The sun had just begun to set when Amara carried a basket of damp clothes into the backyard. Her arms ached, and her feet were sore from standing all day, but she dared not complain. Her aunt's sharp eyes followed her everywhere, waiting for the smallest mistake to punish her. As she bent over to spread a shirt on the line, the sound of a car door shutting echoed from the front yard. Curious, Amara peeked around the corner of the house. A sleek black car was parked near the entrance, and stepping out of it was a tall man in a dark suit. His polished shoes gleamed in the fading light, and his face was hidden beneath the brim of a hat. He carried himself with quiet confidence, like someone used to being respected. Amara's heart skipped. He didn't look like a relative. He didn't look like a friend either. He looked like someone important. The man walked up the steps of the mansion and knocked firmly. Almost at once, Uncle Raymond hurried to the door. His face, usually so stern and controlled, shifted into unease. "Yes? How can I help you?" "I'm here to see Miss Amara Cole," the man said in a deep voice. Though calm, there was a weight to his tone, a seriousness that made Amara's skin prickle from where she stood watching. Her name. He had asked for her. Amara instinctively moved forward, ready to step into the doorway, but her uncle turned quickly, spotting her from the corner of his eye. With a sharp glare, he signaled for her to stay back. She froze, her fingers tightening around the edge of the laundry basket. "I'll handle this," Uncle Raymond said stiffly, blocking the entrance with his body. "Amara is busy. Tell me what this is about." The man in the suit studied him for a moment. His expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered with something unreadable. Then, without another word, he slipped a small envelope into Uncle Raymond's hand. "This concerns her future. I'll be back." Before Amara could blink, he turned and walked away, his steps steady and unhurried. Within seconds, the car was gone, swallowed by the road. Her uncle stood frozen at the doorway, clutching the envelope. His jaw clenched tight, his forehead damp with sweat. He didn't call her name, didn't explain. Instead, he stormed back inside. That night, Amara's chores doubled. She was made to clean until her arms shook and her knees ached. Every mistake earned her aunt's biting words. Her stomach churned with confusion. Why had the man asked for her? What had he said to frighten her uncle so much? As she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Amara couldn't shake the image of the black-suited stranger. Whoever he was, his presence had unsettled her uncle deeply. And that could only mean one thing: there was more to her situation than she was being told. The morning after the stranger's visit felt heavier than usual. Amara's hands shook as she stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing dishes that seemed to pile endlessly. Her arms were weak from exhaustion. Her stomach was empty, growling with hunger. Her aunt's sharp voice rang from the dining table. "Be careful with those plates. They cost more than your life." Amara swallowed hard and tried to steady her hands. But her mind kept replaying the image of the man in the black suit. His calm voice, his serious eyes. It unsettled her. She didn't know who he was or why he had asked for her, but she could feel something had shifted in the house since his visit. Her hand slipped. The wet porcelain plate slid from her grasp and crashed onto the tiled floor, shattering into jagged pieces. The sound rang through the mansion like thunder. Aunt Lydia jumped to her feet, her face twisted with fury. "That's it," she shrieked. "I've had enough of you. Get out of this house." "Please, Auntie, I didn't mean—" Amara's voice broke as she bent to gather the broken pieces. "Don't you dare call me Auntie," Lydia spat. "You're nothing but a burden. Out." Uncle Raymond entered the kitchen, his jaw tight. Without a word, he grabbed Amara's arm and dragged her through the hall. Her pleas echoed off the walls. "Please, Uncle. I'll work harder. I'll do anything. Please don't throw me out." But her cries fell on deaf ears. At the front gate, he shoved her forward. Rain poured from the sky, soaking her in seconds. The gate slammed shut behind her with a finality that crushed her spirit. Amara stumbled into the street, her clothes clinging to her body, her hair plastered against her face. She had no money, no phone, nowhere to go. Each step she took was heavy, her legs trembling beneath her. The city lights blurred through her tears as she wandered aimlessly. Finally, too tired to continue, she spotted an unfinished building at the edge of the road. Its walls were half-built, its roof exposed to the storm. Still, it was shelter. She crept inside, curling into a corner. Her body shivered violently, her stomach knotted in hunger, but exhaustion dragged her down. She closed her eyes, hoping to escape into sleep. But the night was not merciful. Shadows shifted in the darkness. Rough voices whispered, followed by the sound of footsteps. Before she could react, a gang of men surrounded her. Their eyes glinted with cruel hunger. Their laughter filled the empty structure. "Look what we found," one of them sneered, grabbing her wrist. Amara screamed, struggling, but their hands were too many, too strong. They pinned her down, ignoring her cries. Their laughter echoed in her ears, mixing with the sound of the storm outside. When they finally left, the silence was deafening. Amara lay curled on the cold floor, her clothes torn, her body aching. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she hugged herself tightly, rocking back and forth. "Why?" she whispered hoarsely. "Why did you leave me, Mama? Papa? Why?" Her voice cracked, carrying her pain into the hollow night. She had lost her parents, her home, her safety, and now even her dignity. For the first time in her life, Amara felt truly alone. The rain fell in relentless sheets, drenching Amara's frail body as she stumbled through the streets. She had been walking for hours, her clothes clinging to her skin, her hair plastered against her face. The world blurred around her, her mind numb from hunger, exhaustion, and grief. She didn't care where she was going. She didn't even notice the headlights cutting through the rain until it was too late. A loud screech tore through the night as a luxurious black car skidded to a halt. The impact sent Amara crashing onto the wet asphalt, pain shooting through her body. "Good Lord!" the driver gasped, slamming his hands on the wheel. The back door flung open, and a tall man in a tailored suit stepped out, his expression sharp with alarm. Rain soaked his hair and shoulders instantly, but he didn't care. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "What were you thinking?" he snapped. Though his voice carried more panic than anger, he turned quickly to his driver. Help me get her in the car. Now. Together, they lifted her limp body into the back seat. The man held her gently as the car sped toward the nearest hospital. He looked down at her pale face, streaked with rain and tears, and something inside him tightened. She looked so fragile, so lost. At the hospital, nurses rushed her into the emergency ward. The man paced the hallway, his jaw tense, his heart pounding in his chest. He was used to controlling every detail of his life, but at that moment he felt powerless. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor stepped out, pulling off his gloves. Sir, both mother and baby are safe. The man blinked, confusion crossing his face. Baby? The doctor nodded. Yes, sir. She's pregnant. She needs rest, but she and the child are out of danger. Adrian Kane, CEO of Kane Enterprises, stood frozen. Pregnant. The word echoed in his mind. He turned toward the room where the girl lay, a strange mix of relief and fury rising in him. Relief that she was alive. Fury at the thought of what might have led her here. When Amara finally stirred, she opened her eyes to find Adrian sitting at the edge of the bed, his gaze fixed on her. The first thing she felt was fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of being so vulnerable before a stranger. But when he leaned forward and gently took her hand, his touch was careful, steady, as though he was afraid of breaking her. You're awake, he said softly. You're safe now. Her lips trembled. I'm pregnant. Adrian hesitated, then nodded. Yes, the doctor said you and the baby are fine. Her chest tightened, and tears spilled down her cheeks. She turned her face away, covering her mouth as sobs escaped. The memories of that horrible night came rushing back, tearing her open all over again. Adrian sat in silence, giving her time, his thumb brushing lightly across her trembling hand. Finally, her voice broke through the quiet, thin and shaking. Something happened to me. That night, I didn't want it. I didn't choose it. Her words faltered as the tears overwhelmed her. Adrian's jaw clenched, his eyes dark with anger. Who did this to you? She shook her head quickly. Please, I can't, not now. She couldn't bring herself to tell him about her uncle, her stolen inheritance, the betrayal of her own family. It was too raw, too dangerous to trust a stranger with. For now, she would only share what haunted her most. Adrian exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm for her sake. He didn't press further. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice low but steady. You don't have to explain everything right now. What matters is that you're safe. And I promise you, no one will hurt you again. For the first time in days, Amara allowed herself to breathe. She didn't know who Adrian Kane really was, or why fate had placed him in her path. But as she lay in that hospital bed, holding onto the warmth of his hand, she felt the smallest flicker of hope. A road she never expected had opened before her. A road that might just lead her destiny. Amara had expected to be left at the hospital with nothing but her pain and the growing life inside her. But Adrian surprised her. Once she was strong enough to leave, he didn't just drop her off on some street corner. Instead, he brought her into his world. His mansion stood like a castle, its tall glass windows glowing against the evening sky as the car rolled through the gates. Amara stared in awe, unable to believe she would be living there, even for a day. The guards bowed as the car passed, and when the door opened, Adrian offered her his hand. From now on, he said quietly, this is home. At first she refused. I can't stay here. I don't belong. He stopped her with a firm but gentle shake of his head. You've been through enough. No one will harm you under my roof. The first night, she slept on silk sheets, her body finally resting without fear of footsteps creeping in the dark. The soft mattress felt strange after weeks of cold floors, but for the first time in a long while, Amara dreamt of something other than pain. The following days only deepened her disbelief. Adrian gave her a wardrobe of new clothes, not flashy designer gowns like the ones she once had as Chief Cole's daughter, but tasteful, comfortable outfits that made her feel human again. He assigned drivers to take her wherever she needed, though she rarely asked for anything. Most surprising of all, he called her into his office one morning and handed her a letter. "A job," he said simply. She blinked, stunned. "A job? But I don't understand." Adrian leaned back in his chair, his sharp features softened by a smile. "I don't believe in charity, Amara. You deserve to stand on your own feet. Work with me, not because I pity you, but because I respect you." The gesture touched her more than she could say. He wasn't offering her handouts, he was giving her dignity. She took the letter with trembling hands and whispered, "Thank you." At Kane Enterprises, whispers followed her everywhere. Some workers nudged each other, whispering that she was Adrian's secret girlfriend. Others swore she was already his hidden wife. No one believed that a girl who looked so radiant, so gentle, had simply appeared out of nowhere and earned Adrian Kane's personal attention. At first, Amara tried to explain herself, insisting she was only there to work. But when she mentioned the gossip to Adrian one evening, he only chuckled. "Let them talk," he said, his voice calm, his eyes lingering on her with quiet warmth. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. Live your life, Amara. The people who matter already see your worth." His words settled deep inside her heart. She didn't know how she had ended up in this new world, but she felt a strange peace she hadn't known in months. She found herself looking forward to each day, her job, her growing strength, and the gentle presence of the man who had pulled her out of the storm. What Amara didn't know was that Adrian's feelings were shifting. He told himself he was only protecting her, only giving her the stability she needed. But when she smiled at him, shy yet grateful, his chest tightened. When she walked into a room, the air felt different. When she laughed, soft, unguarded. It stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years. Adrian Kane, the man who had built empires with his hands and ruled boardrooms with his voice, was slowly, quietly falling in love. And deep in her heart, though she didn't yet realize it, Amara's new beginning was more than a change of life. It was the start of a destiny neither of them had seen coming. The weekend sun slanted through the tall windows of Adrian's mansion, painting golden streaks across the marble floor. Amara was in the kitchen, helping the staff prepare light refreshments. Though Adrian had told her she didn't have to lift a finger, she insisted. Doing small things made her feel less like a guest and more like herself. That afternoon, Adrian's best friend and business partner, Marcus Bennett, arrived unannounced. He carried a sleek leather folder under his arm, his sharp suit pressed perfectly, his smile wide. "Adrian around?" Marcus asked, his tone smooth. "He's upstairs," Amara replied politely. "Would you like something to drink?" Marcus waved a hand. "That would be lovely." She turned back to the counter, but her eyes followed him discreetly. Something about his energy prickled her skin, though she couldn't explain why. When the maid entered the kitchen to prepare drinks, Marcus leaned casually against the counter and slipped a small envelope into her palm. Amara froze, her heart hammering. The maid's eyes widened, but Marcus whispered something, and she nodded nervously. Amara's breath caught. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw the maid pour a strange powder into Adrian's glass before filling it with juice. Her hands trembled. No. This can't be happening. For a moment, fear rooted her in place. What if she was wrong? What if Marcus caught her watching? But then she pictured Adrian, the man who had saved her from the road, the man who had given her dignity when she had nothing. She couldn't stay silent. Without hesitation, she ran upstairs. She burst into Adrian's study, her chest heaving. "Adrian!" she whispered urgently. He looked up from his desk, startled. "Amara? What's wrong?" "There's something in your drink." Marcus paid the maid. He asked her to poison it. Adrian's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing in disbelief for only a second before turning to cold steel. He stood swiftly, brushing past her. "Stay here," he ordered gently but firmly. "You've done the right thing." Amara grabbed his sleeve. "Please, be careful." He gave her a look of reassurance, though his heart was pounding. Inside, fury burned like fire, but his expression was calm as he pulled out his phone and quietly called the police. Minutes later, Adrian descended the stairs. Marcus was lounging on the sofa, crossing his legs with easy confidence. The maid carried in a tray with 2 glasses. "There you are," Marcus said, standing with the folder. "Just some documents to sign. Thought we could go over them quickly." Adrian smiled thinly and accepted one of the glasses. He lifted it, swirling the liquid slowly, watching Marcus over the rim. Marcus's eyes flickered for the briefest second. Too quick for most to notice, but Adrian caught it. He raised the glass to his lips but stopped when the sharp knock of the front door echoed through the mansion. The police entered, their presence heavy with authority. Marcus paled but quickly composed himself. "What's going on?" Adrian set the glass down carefully. "Why don't you tell me, Marcus?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus forced a laugh. "This is absurd." Adrian pressed a button on the small remote he carried. A large screen on the wall flickered to life, showing the CCTV feed from the kitchen. The footage was clear. Marcus slipping the envelope into the maid's hand, the maid tipping powder into the glass. The room fell silent. Marcus's face drained of color. "This isn't—" "Adrian, listen. I can explain." "Save it for the authorities." Adrian cut him off coldly. The police moved in swiftly, handcuffing Marcus as he shouted and cursed. The maid trembled, confessing through sobs that Marcus had promised her a fortune if she obeyed. As they were led away, Adrian stood still, his fists clenched at his sides. Betrayal cut deeper than any wound. When the door finally closed behind the officers, Amara hurried down the stairs. Without thinking, Adrian pulled her into a tight embrace. "You saved my life," he murmured, his voice low but full of emotion. Amara shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I just couldn't let them hurt you." He pulled back just enough to look into her face, his gaze steady, vulnerable for the first time. "Amara, I don't know what I would have done without you." In that moment, the line between gratitude and something far deeper began to blur. That night, after the chaos of Marcus's betrayal had finally settled, Adrian pulled Amara into his arms. His embrace was firm, protective, almost desperate. For a moment, she simply rested against him, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "You saved my life," he whispered, his breath brushing against her hair. Then his voice broke, stripped of all the control he usually wore like armor. "I can't hide it anymore. I love you, Amara." Her eyes widened. For weeks, she had felt his kindness growing into something deeper, but to hear it spoken aloud made her heart tremble. She lifted her gaze to meet his, her lips trembling. "Adrian, I love you too." And before either of them could second-guess their hearts, they leaned in and shared their first kiss. It was gentle at first, almost cautious, but it deepened quickly, carrying the weight of everything they had been through: loss, fear, survival, and now, a fragile hope for love. From that night forward, their bond blossomed. Adrian became her steady light, and Amara became the softness he didn't know his heart craved. Days were filled with laughter and warmth. He made sure she never felt alone, whether it was dinner at home or quiet walks through his gardens. She, in turn, filled his mansion with something it had long lacked: joy. One evening, weeks later, the two of them sat on the rooftop balcony of Adrian's mansion. The night sky stretched endlessly above, glittering with stars. The city lights flickered below, a reminder of the empire Adrian commanded. But on that rooftop, it wasn't wealth or power that mattered. It was just the two of them, talking about silly things, laughing at small jokes, and enjoying the simple act of being together. Suddenly, Amara's laughter broke into sobs. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling. "Amara?" Adrian asked, alarmed. He pulled her hands away gently. "What's wrong?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she finally let out the truth she had carried like a stone in her chest. She told him everything. Her uncle moving into the mansion after her parents' deaths, her designer clothes stolen, her education taken away, the cruel insults, the endless chores, the hunger. Her voice cracked as she confessed how they had thrown her out like trash, leaving her to wander the streets in the rain. But what made Adrian's fists clench with fury was when she admitted, in a whisper, "They stole everything. My uncle forced the family lawyer to give him my father's estate. He's living in my house, spending my father's money, while I—" She broke off, her voice shaking. Adrian's jaw tightened, his eyes blazing with anger. "They will pay for this." That night, he called his most trusted detectives. Within weeks, the truth unfolded like a rotten fruit being split open. Documents were uncovered showing her uncle's threats against the lawyer. Records revealed money siphoned from the family company into his personal accounts. Witnesses stepped forward, describing how he had gloated about becoming the new master of the coal fortune. The evidence was overwhelming. One morning, Amara watched from Adrian's side as police stormed the mansion that had once been hers. Her uncle's furious shouts echoed down the halls as he was dragged away in handcuffs, his wife wailing behind him. Within days, the courts restored everything to Amara: her father's mansion, the company, the bank accounts, the estate. But as she walked through the familiar gates of her childhood home once again, she realized something important. Regaining her wealth wasn't what truly mattered. Yes, she had her dignity back, and justice had been served. But her heart whispered that the greatest treasure she had found was Adrian. He had been her shelter when she had nothing, her light in the darkest storm. And now, standing beside him with her inheritance returned, Amara felt whole again. Not just as an heiress, but as a woman who had survived and found love. Months slipped by like pages turning in a book, each one filled with a new chapter of hope. Amara's life was no longer one of pain and servitude, but of laughter, warmth, and anticipation. The day finally arrived when her cries of anguish were replaced by the tiny cries of her daughter, a beautiful baby girl with soft brown curls and eyes that mirrored Amara's own. Adrian was by her side in the hospital, his hand never leaving hers. The moment he saw the baby, he smiled with such tenderness that Amara's heart melted. "She's perfect," he whispered, brushing his thumb across the infant's tiny hand. In the days that followed, their home transformed. Every corner seemed to glow with new life. The mansion echoed with lullabies instead of silence, laughter instead of loneliness. Adrian adored the baby, often cradling her in his arms while praising Amara. "You're radiant," he told her one evening as they sat by the fireplace. "You've given me the greatest gift. Both of you have." Their love blossomed with every quiet date, dinners under soft candlelight, late-night movies on the couch, and gentle evening walks where Adrian carried the baby close to his chest. He made sure Amara never felt less than cherished. But storms often lurk behind the brightest skies. One night, Amara went to check the nursery and froze. The crib was empty. Panic shot through her chest. She screamed, her voice sharp enough to shake the mansion. "Adrian, she's gone." Moments later, a chilling voice echoed in the hallway. Standing in the shadows was her cousin, Vanessa, her uncle's bitter daughter. Her eyes were wild, her grip on the crying baby firm and threatening. "You stole my life," Vanessa spat, her voice cracked with rage. "You got the house, the company, the fortune, everything that should have been mine. Now I'll steal yours." "Vanessa, please," Amara begged, her knees nearly giving out. "Don't hurt her. She's just a baby." But Vanessa only tightened her hold, her face twisted with years of envy. "You don't understand what it feels like to be nothing. Tonight, you'll know." Amara's heart thundered with terror. Swallowing her fear, she whispered, "Tell me where to meet you. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt her." Before leaving, Amara rushed to Adrian, tears streaming down her face as she explained everything. His expression darkened, every muscle tense, but his voice remained steady. "You're not going alone. I won't risk losing either of you." He called his men immediately, giving sharp instructions, then took Amara's hand. "Trust me," he said firmly. "I'll bring her back." The meeting place was an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city, its broken windows like jagged teeth against the night sky. Vanessa stood in the center, rocking the baby dangerously as Amara approached, her hands trembling. "Give her back," Amara pleaded, her voice breaking. Take me instead. Do whatever you want with me. But please, not her. Vanessa's laugh was brittle. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about the baby. It's about you suffering, like I have. But before she could take another step, a sudden beam of light cut through the darkness. Police officers stormed in from every entrance, shouting commands. Vanessa spun in shock, clutching the baby tighter. Drop the child, an officer ordered. Adrian emerged from the shadows, his voice calm but firm. Vanessa, look at me. This ends now. For a tense moment, the world held its breath. Then, shaking, Vanessa released the baby into an officer's arms just as the police grabbed her. She screamed and fought, but her cries were drowned out by the sound of Amara's sobs as she ran forward. The baby was placed back into her arms, warm and safe. Amara cradled her tightly, her tears wetting the baby's tiny blanket. My baby, my sweet baby. Adrian wrapped his arms around both of them, pulling them close against his chest. His voice was low, fierce, and full of promise. You're safe now. No one will ever hurt you again. Not while I'm here. Amara looked up at him, her heart swelling with love so deep it felt unshakable. For the first time since her parents' death, she felt whole again. She had lost everything. Her family, her fortune, her dignity. But in the storm, she had found something far greater. She had found love, true love. And now, with Adrian by her side and her daughter in her arms, Amara knew this was only the beginning of their forever. The morning sun spilled across the vast windows of Cole Enterprises, lighting up the boardroom where Amara sat at the head of the table. She looked confident, her dark hair swept neatly behind her shoulders, her baby girl resting in a crib beside her. Executives watched in admiration as she spoke with calm authority, her voice steady, her presence commanding. Months had passed since Vanessa's desperate act, and Amara had stepped fully into the role her father once held. With Adrian's unwavering support, she rebuilt the company not only with intelligence, but with compassion, the same compassion that had made her beloved back at school. She treated her employees fairly, remembered their names, and made sure no one ever felt overlooked. The mansion that had once been a place of betrayal was hers again, but it felt different now. It was filled with love and warmth, laughter echoing through the halls as her daughter learned to giggle, as Adrian teased her over late-night movie choices, as family dinners became a cherished ritual instead of a memory. In the evenings, Amara often stood by the nursery window, watching the stars. She thought of her parents, whispering prayers of gratitude. Though they were gone, their love had shaped her, and their memory guided her. One night, Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist as their daughter slept soundly in her crib. You've built something incredible, Amara, he murmured. Your father would be proud. She leaned back into him, smiling softly. I couldn't have done it without you. When I lost everything, I thought my life was over. But you gave me more than I ever dreamed I'd have. He kissed the side of her head. I didn't give you anything you didn't already deserve. You were always meant to rise again. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they weren't born of sorrow. They were born of peace. She had endured loss, betrayal, and unimaginable pain, but she had come out stronger. She had her father's legacy in her hands, her daughter in her arms, and the love of a man who had proven himself time and again. For Amara Cole, the storms of yesterday had passed. Ahead stretched a horizon filled with light, family, and forever. And as she stood with Adrian at her side and her baby in her arms, she knew with certainty, she had not just inherited wealth. She had inherited love, resilience, and the power to turn her scars into strength. Her story was no longer about what she had lost. It was about what she had gained. Forever,